Okay, friends, this is the Mrs. Volpe from our Half Acre Homestead. Today I'm going to make a traditional Christmas treat or Yuletide treat that my family loves, and it's called sausage rolls. Now, this is going to take me all day because, as simple as this is, it's a very laborious process. Now, what you're going to need is 8 cups of flour. Mine is, you can use white, mine is semi-whole wheat. You're going to need 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 2 2/3 cups of cold water, and 2 pounds of unsalted or half salt butter. Now first we're making the puff pastry, and then we will make the filling. This is totally from scratch, folks. And what we do is we just take our 2 teaspoons of salt and put that in there. Make sure that's all mixed up. Now the basic dough is just flour and water and a little bit of lemon juice, and we're just going to add our lemon juice right into our water. Now you're going to need a stout rolling pin, or if you're lucky enough to have a noodle maker, that helps too in the end. But first you're going to need the rolling pin for the initial rolling of the dough. Now this is a really simple recipe, but I'm telling you, it is labor intensive. It takes a long time, because what we're going to do is we're going to make this dough, and then we're going to put the butter in between layers of this dough and fold it and roll it at least 4 times. Now that may sound easy, but this is tough stuff to roll, especially because it has to be chilled in between each folding and rolling. It has to be chilled for a minimum of 45 minutes, for the very simple reason is you don't want your butter to get soft. What makes the pastry puff up is the melting of the butter between the layers. If you work your butter into the flour, it won't puff up. It'll just be dough. It won't be puff pastry. All right, so I will get back to you when this is all worked in. Now I just want to show you also that you're going to, once the most of the moisture is worked in, you're going to knead the rest of the flour into this dough as if you were making bread, because this is, just like I said, it's a really simple dough. And then we're going to press this into a loaf pan, but because we want to measure it. Anyway, we'll be back when this is ready. Okay, as you can see, I have my dough in a pan. Now, like I said, there's no need for it to be in the pan other than for measuring purposes, because I need this in 16 pieces. So we're going to start by cutting it in half, and this is for 1 pound of butter, and this is for the other pound of butter. Now you can drop this into the pound of butter if you want, but the easiest way to do this is to cut it in half. We're going to make this into 8. So there's 2, there's 4, and there is 6, and there is 8. All right, now we do the same with our butter. Now we have 8 so far of these, and now we're going to cut our butter into 8 pieces the same way. Now this may seem like tedious, but if you've got shoulders and arms like Hulk Hogan, you can go ahead and put your pound of butter inside this dough, fold it, wrap it, and roll it out if you choose. But I'm telling you, I've done it, and this way much simpler. Alrighty, so now we have our butter, and it is now in 2. Now this, for my American friends, sticks of butter are great for this, because then all you have to do is cut your sticks in half. And here is 4, and here is 8. Alrighty, now we have a piece of butter for each piece of dough. Now the work starts. Now I'm making a big recipe because this is a huge holiday treat of my family. We take our little 1/8 of plain dough, kind of make it into, you could, this isn't going to hurt it to work it because you haven't got the butter in it yet. You make a ball, you cut an X through, and you fold these back kind of like leaves, so you have a slight mound of dough in the center. Then you're going to put your little stick of butter there, and you are going to gently press the dough up around your butter. Now this is kind of a time-consuming process, but you do have to be semi-quick. You do not want your butter getting soft. If it gets soft, it'll work itself into the dough. Now we just take our rolling pin And rather than roll, we're just going to press gently in a rocking motion, turn it and press, because we really don't want the butter coming through and we don't want the butter in to the dough. So we're just going to press it down enough so that we can do a pocketbook fold. And that is just about right. Now, pocketbook fold. And if you do see a little bit of butter showing through, make sure that piece gets folded in first. And a pocketbook fold is basically just rolled over like that. Now I just want to share something with you while I do this last dough ball. I used to work at a bakery. They used to make sausage rolls, and people raved about these sausage rolls. But I watched the baker. He had all the flour and everything in the big mixer, and then he was just throwing in chunks of this yellow stuff that looked like hard yellow Vaseline. And I asked him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm making puff pastry." And I went, "What? Don't you need butter for puff pastry?" And he said, "No, it doesn't stay hard long enough to work in the dough. Butter works into the dough." And then I thought about it, and I thought, I'm sorry, but the puff pastry for my old 1950s cookbook calls for butter. Something, it's colored yellow so that when it melts, it looks like butter, and it's called hard fat. Ew. And I'm sorry, folks, I don't know if it's hydrogenated or if it's an animal fat or whatever the case may be, but I'm telling you, there is no substitute for real butter. So what I ended up doing was I came home and I did this to prove him wrong. Anyway, there is our plate 16 pocketbooks, and we are going to put these in the fridge. They are going to have to chill for a minimum of 45 minutes, not freeze, or you'll never be able to roll them out and you'll just break the butter. So once these are in the fridge and chilling, you and I are going to work on the sausage stuffing. Alrighty, we'll be back. Okay, while our pocket fold pastry is chilling, I'm going to make the sausage filling. Now what I have here is 4.5 pounds of lean ground pork. And yes, it's fresh. You never use frozen, because we are going to freeze these with the raw meat in them. You shouldn't refreeze any meat that has been frozen and then thawed. All right, but I got this at the butcher yesterday, and he ground it on the spot for me. So into this, I'm going to add, I took a pound of onions, and I sliced and sauteed them in butter, of course. Never ever hydrogenated oil or vegetable oils of any kind if I can help it. Alright, and when we start mixing that in, we're going to put in our seasonings. I'm going to put in 1 tablespoon of black pepper, 1 tablespoon and a half of sea salt, 2 tablespoons of ground sage, and I'm going to say that's about how much is in this package, so I'm just going to dump that in there, 3 tablespoons of parsley. And the secret weapon, folks, these are chilies that I've just hit with the spice grinder just to make them a little bit smaller. 1 teaspoon of ground chilies. Alright folks, my hands are clean. And you really want the onions and the seasonings mixed through your sausage meat. Now you can make this your own with your own seasonings, but this just happens to be the seasonings that my family likes. I think I'm just going to add one more seasoning. I'm going to add a teaspoon of ground fennel, because you know what? It just smells so good. Alrighty. I'm going to put this in an oblong rectangular cake pan, and when our dough is ready to be filled, I will show you why I did that. Now as you can see here, I have just lined this cake pan, I think it's a 9 by 13, with a piece of parchment, And I'm just going to press my meat down in here. I just lined it with a piece of parchment to make it easier to get out. We really want this to be as uniform, especially into the corners, as possible. Alrighty, we'll be back. Alrighty, on to our second rolling of our dough. Now that our meat is in the fridge, setting up, all I did was I rolled up my rolling pin in my cloth because I don't want to shake it out and then have to use flour again. And here we have our plate of folded pocketbook doughs. Now this is nice and firm. You can feel that the butter is hard. And again, all we're going to do is press it. We don't, especially when it's chilled like this, you don't want to overwork it. You really can't overwork it, or you're not going to get your puff pastry. All you're going to get is hard dough. Now that butter is starting to show. And we're just going to do this. And you just want to press it out and roll it out enough to do a pocketbook. And there we go. I also just want to show you that as you go from fold to fold, your pocketbooks are going to get more uniform. And like I said, there is no rushing it. Don't get faster. Don't get it rolling. This is the same process over and over again. It's tedious, but oh my God, you are going to be the hero of the hour when you take these out to a dinner party or a potluck supper. Anything over the holidays, these are just amazing. All right, we'll be back in a bit. Okay, folks, we're going to roll number 3. The only reason I'm showing you the roll after roll after roll is to show you how important it is to know that there are no shortcuts to making puff pastry. It's worth doing right. This is roll number 3. Now, you really do need 4 rolls, because if you don't do it often enough, you're not putting enough layers of butter in your pastry. The butter has to layer between each. That's why we fold it over and over and over again. Anyway, we'll be back when I'm on roll number 4. Alrighty? Alrighty. We're back. And we are going to do our final rolling. Here we have our meat, and it's nice and firm. We have 1 plate of our dough, and here I have a parchment lined cake pan to put our sausage rolls in. Now I am just going to sprinkle this down, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to roll it out a little bit. With all this folding, you almost get the perfect shape for your dough. Now, what we're going to do is we have our meat here, and it's almost, I've cut it in half, and I have half in the fridge, and because we don't want to let it sit out at room temperature, and this can be pretty time consuming. Alright, so what we have here, we have our sausage rolls for our pastry dough, and we're just going to trim it so that it's quite nice and rectangular. And look at that, it's almost exactly the right size. I switched this over, by the way, from the cake pan to a cookie sheet because it was going to be too thick. And I just have this nice knife, and I'm going to make another recommendation. When you do your onions for sauteing, don't just slice them thin, dice them, because what's happening here is I'm getting strings of onion when it should be nicely chopped. Now, here is my sausage, and I'm just going to pop this in here. I'm actually going to roll it a little bit and let the flour on it, and then I'm just going to roll it like this. And I'm going to take my pastry brush, a little bit of water, and I'm just going to dampen the one edge, and I hope you can see this. I'm going to dampen the one edge, and then I'm just going to roll it over just like that. And we're just going to cut them up about 1.5 inches long. See, I'm having a problem with these onions. There we go. And what we do is we put them in this pan and we line them all up, and then we freeze them like this until they're solid, and then we can repackage them. But you don't want to shove them all in a package when they're still soft, because they'll squish. Isn't that lovely? And of course, when I'm done this, I will bake some off, because you really do want to see the finished result. And I wish you could see the layers of butter in here. It really is lovely. Anyway, we'll be back when I have some enough for the oven. Alright folks, while I'm doing the rest of these, I'm going to pop a few of these in the oven just so that we can test them, and these will bake while I am doing the rest. Alrighty, we're going to pop these in a 350-degree oven for 25 minutes. Anyway, folks, what I did was I took these out at 25 minutes, and I put them on a wire rack because they were literally sitting in the butter, and I popped them back in for another 10 minutes. So the prognosis is 350 degrees, 35 minutes. And as soon as these cool down, we're going to get Daddy to taste them. Alrighty, we'll be right back. Alright, Papa's finishing his work. And remember, these are, you can't have the whole plate. These are a little more golden because they're whole wheat. Okay, here you go, Papa. It's hot. Careful. He doesn't want...
Tastes like Christmas.
There you go. Sausage rolls. A little more golden because I use whole wheat flour, but a labor of love, but they'll love you for it. Take care.